Hello everyone and welcome to Retail Archaeology. In this week's episode, we are going to take a trip to the mall and see what malls look like now since most states have lifted most of their lockdown orders on businesses. Now the first thing I noticed when I arrived at my local mall, which is Superstition Springs Center in Mesa, Arizona, is that the movie theater is still closed, which is unfortunate because this is kind of a neat little movie theater. It looks like movie theaters are going to be some of the last things to reopen, and from what I've read, it sounds like some theater chains may not come back at all. It is really sad to see the now showing poster area just completely empty. Doesn't look like there's anything coming soon either. Now I had to check out this tortoise while I was over here. This tortoise was actually part of the original playground that was here when the mall first opened. There was also a really cool giant Gila monster slide, but unfortunately that's gone. There was also a really neat nature trail, but that's gone as well. It's been replaced with a cheesecake factory. I just think it's really interesting that they kept this little piece of the original playground and gave it its own little section over here. Let's go ahead and head inside the mall and take a quick look at the map so you can get an idea of how big this place is. Now I've done some videos in the past on this mall, and those go deeper into the history of the mall and everything. That's not so much what I'm going to be covering today. This video is more about my first trip to a mall since the whole COVID-19 lockdown situation started, and also to kind of see, what kind of changes have been made and what things look like. I did notice they now have sanitizing stations all over the place, and they also have these banners up at each of the entrances, which I think are kind of goofy. It's like, welcome back, friend. Please open your pocket and spend some money. And then over here, they've got a list of, things that they're doing, steps they're taking to kind of combat the spread of COVID-19. Now, something they do say on these banners is they suggest that everybody in the mall wear a mask. As we go throughout the video and see, you'll notice not a lot of people are actually wearing masks, which is pretty unfortunate. This mall is in Arizona, which, as from what I read the other day, is now the COVID-19 epicenter. So not seeing masks kind of sucks. There's a good dude there wearing a mask, though. Something else we noticed is a lot of the big stores are still closed. For example, the Victoria's Secret you can see here is still temporarily closed, even though the mall is now open. Lane Bryant was the same situation. That's pretty interesting to see because, at least in my state in Arizona, the malls have been open for a couple of weeks now, but it looks like a lot of the big name retailers are still not seeing it as being very safe. Although this sign says that they'll be reopening on 6/17. That's just a few days after this was filmed. The Children's Place was another store that was temporarily closed, and that's something else I noticed is that stores like the Children's Place, Victoria's Secret, they're all stores that are already financially struggling, so I have to imagine it's just making things worse them having to keep their stores closed. But I also think it says something about how safe these big brands actually think things are if they're still choosing to keep their stores closed. Something else I noticed about the mall is they did remove a lot of the benches. There's still some seats and things around, but there used to be benches in between these long stretches, and they've gotten rid of those. And back there in the distance we can see the former Sears. Now this was interesting. This is the Fletcher Organ Store where the old people go to buy organs and get free organ lessons, and I've never seen that closed before. I'm not sure if it's temporary or permanent. There's no sign saying it was temporary. Now here's something else I'm never able to film is the play area of a mall because it's usually full of children and I don't want to film other people's kids, but since it's closed, we can take a look at it here. That's got to be hurting the mall too because these play areas seem to be some of the busiest areas of the mall, and now when you look around it's just empty storefronts around it. Now there's something. I didn't know a fathom was 6 feet. I actually learned something at the mall there. Here's something else I'm not surprised to see is still closed is the arcade. I don't know how that business is going to work. That's some of the most unsanitary things, arcade games. I don't know if they can have somebody clean those games often enough to make people feel safe. Speaking of which, here's another sign just explaining some of the things they're doing to try and help shoppers feel safer, like making sure to clean stuff. They should have been doing that before, but I guess they're doing it now. But it doesn't seem like this is really engendering a lot of confidence because the mall is not really crowded for a Sunday afternoon. Now this is unfortunate. The boot and shoe repair place is gone. That's been here the last couple of times I've done videos on this place. They had a really neat neon shoe sign. Kind of sucks that they're gone. One of the reasons that I chose this mall as the first one to go to after all the lockdowns that have been lifted is because this is a mall that I've noticed has been struggling recently. It wasn't a dead mall the last time I was here, but it seemed like it could be going in that direction, so I wanted to see how all of the lockdowns and things had affected malls like this, and I would say it's been a pretty negative effect. There are still some new things like that Ulta store across the way there. That's relatively new, but it doesn't seem like it's drawing a lot of traffic into the mall. I see a lot of people going into it from the exterior entrance. But yeah, as you can see, there's really not a lot of people here. The center area of the mall, like where the food court is and stuff, seems to be the busiest, but as you get out to the edges of the mall, things just kind of really die off. And I've got to say it again, it's really unfortunate not to see people wearing masks here. That seems to be a huge problem in Arizona. I mean, I don't see the big deal. I think the masks are cool. I mean, check this out. See, like the song says, masks have the power to save the day, and they're freaking awesome. You guys remember that old mask cartoon? I loved that when I was a kid. But seriously though, just wear a mask when you go out in public. Now here's the infamous GameStop, and I thought this was pretty interesting. They have signs out there saying they're limiting the number of people in the store, and that makes sense because this is one of those really tiny mall GameStops. I'm also not surprised to see that they're one of the bigger name stores that's open because they were trying to stay open during all of this, claiming they are an essential business, and between that kind of stuff and people not wearing masks, it's not helpful, and all of the malls are going to look like this pretty soon if people can't just get their act together. This part of the mall by the Sears looks much worse than the last time I was here. It looks like a lot of the storefronts are now empty. Some of them have stores in them, but the gates are down, but I don't see signs saying that the closure is temporary, so they could be stores that didn't survive. It's very quiet. Now this is another one that kills me to see. The See's Candy is still closed. There is a sign saying that it's temporary, but this is one of my favorite stores in this mall. I always stop here for a piece of chocolate real quick. And I don't think I've ever seen these gates down before because I never noticed the tile detail work there carries over to the gate. But here's the sign saying they are temporarily closed, but unfortunately there's no date on here as well, so who knows if it will ever actually reopen. You can see as we head down to the center of the mall, this store not included obviously, that things are a little bit more lively over here. There's more open storefronts. But that kind of makes sense. It seems like the stuff around the center of the mall, like around the food court, is kind of the last to die. I forget what this is, but I feel like there was something in that spot the last time I was here. The mall looks just so empty now between the lack of people and also the lack of benches and stuff. Everything just seems more wide open. And now here's the Play Factory, another thing that I'm surprised is not closed. And I caught this sign here and I noticed it says they're just open on Wednesday for a couple of hours. I was like, how do you run a business like that? But then I noticed they have a sign that says they're open by appointment, so I guess people are still booking birthday parties and things here. It looks like they are still operating though. When I look through the gate, I could see it looks like they left some twinkling lights on over by that pink table. The CBD store is closed. That's kind of surprising. Those kind of seem to be taking off in malls, and I'm not sure if that's temporary or not. There wasn't a sign saying that it was. Now let's take a look at the food court, and the carousel is closed. That doesn't surprise me at all. But there are some people here in the food court. Something else I noticed is they pulled a lot of the tables and chairs out to kind of space things out more for social distancing purposes. Let's go ahead and take a look outside here, and we can take a look at the courtyard. This is a nice looking, mall courtyard, but what was here originally was so much nicer. There was this big, huge fountain. There was the playground with the Gila Monster slide, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video. This is just very blah, not inviting. The Sparrow is still open, and that was kind of surprising too, that they had the Eden area still open, but only 2 tables open. That seems kind of useless. That line at Orange Julius, though, is a little disconcerting. It doesn't look like people are properly social distancing, and hardly anybody was wearing masks. I have to say, my first trip back to a mall since all of this started felt very strange. It almost felt like I shouldn't be here. The state of Arizona says it's, safe enough for everything to open now, but it doesn't feel that way with the people just kind of, walking around with the lack of masks, noticing that a lot of big retailers obviously don't feel safe being open yet, so they're still remaining closed. I just think it's really questionable that now's a good time to open everything up. There's another sad sight, another arcade behind a cage. I just don't know how that business is going to recover. And I will say, reopening early and everybody kind of going back to normal too early isn't going to help a lot of these businesses either. Since I filmed this, it's turned out that coronavirus cases in Arizona have risen drastically. I think we have the highest load of them in the United States now. Our hospitals are filling up again, the emergency rooms. And kind of walking around the mall, I can see why. I think it's too early for people to be out and about at the mall. I certainly didn't feel good about being here after being here for 5 minutes, and I couldn't tell you when the next time I'm going to go back to the mall is. Now here's something interesting. This was a Charlotte Russe that closed and then reopened, and they're open right now, but it looks like their registers are down, so they can't even make any sales. I would just shut the store down. There's something you don't see very often, a closed Bath & Body Works. Now again, that one is also temporary. There is a sign saying that it's a temporary closure, so I'm sure they'll be back. But you can see once again, as we leave the middle of the mall and get further away from the food court and everything, things kind of start to die off again, and it just seems to be getting worse. I have a lot of concerns for this mall now that it's going to be able to survive this hit. This mall just feels so weird now. It doesn't feel like a dead mall. It doesn't feel like an alive mall. I guess zombie mall is kind of the best reference to it. That's what it felt like. I guess that kind of makes sense too with the current situation that's going on. I have heard there are some other malls in the Phoenix area that are actually busy right now, like Arizona Mills, and that frightens me even more when I see the lack of masks here. If that same situation is going on there, that's going to be a breeding ground for infection. I'm not sure why wearing a mask has become a political thing. I don't think it's political at all. It's basic science. Lots of other countries, whenever there's a respiratory bug going around, everybody wears masks, and it seems to do an effective job at limiting infection. I don't know why we can't just simply do that here. I wore a mask the entire time I was here, including outside in the heat, and I did just fine, and I'm not exactly in the best shape. So, there's really, unless you have some sort of medical reason why you can't, there's really no excuse not to just put on a mask real quick before you do something like go to the mall and kind of help protect everybody. I will say it did make me very happy to see pretty much all of the employees at all the stores that were open wearing masks and doing things to keep things clean, but that makes sense. They don't want to die, What are your thoughts, though, on going back to the mall? Has your state reopened, and have you gone back to the mall since then? I'd love to know what your experiences are down in the comments below. Hopefully they're doing better than they are here. I don't know if this whole most people not wearing masks thing is just localized to Arizona. It kind of makes sense in Arizona because, it's Arizona. People really don't like being told what to do, but in this case, I think they just need to suck it up and get over it. But that's where I'm going to wrap up the video. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. Want to see your name here? Head on over to patreon.com/retailarchaeology to find out how you can help support the channel. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my video on what malls look like after all of these state lockdowns have been lifted. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and also make sure to follow at the social media links there because that's the best way to keep up with what's going on with the channel.